If your espresso tastes almost right but never locked in, your grinder is probably the reason. Today I'm counting down 7 grinders, from budget-friendly to boutique level, and I'll tell you exactly what worked, what annoyed me, and which one I'd buy with my own money. Number 7. Cuisinart DBM-8P1. The Cuisinart is the I just want fresh coffee at home classic. It's a Burr grinder, it's simple, and it gives you an 18-position grind selector that spans ultra-fine to extra coarse. In daily use, it's the kind of grinder that feels approachable. Fill the removable 8-ounce hopper, choose a grind setting, and you're basically done. It also has that very consumer-friendly dosing approach, a 4 to 18 cup slide dial, and an electric timer that shuts the unit off when the grind cycle is complete. For drip coffee, that workflow is convenient, and I like that the grind chamber is removable and holds a lot. Cuisinart says enough for up to 32 cups, so it's built for volume, not for micro-precision. Now for espresso specifically, this is where expectations matter. The grinder can go fine because the selector includes ultra-fine, but espresso dialing often needs tiny adjustments, and the DBM-8's 18 steps can feel a bit one click too coarse, next click too fine. In my testing, that meant I could get drinkable espresso, but it was harder to land on that sweet spot where the shot time and taste both line up. Another real-world thing, this style of grinder is better when you grind a dose and use it, rather than chasing ultra-consistent single-dose espresso routines. It's made to grind enough coffee reliably, not to minimize retention or help you do back-to-back micro changes for different beans. If you're mostly making milk drinks and you want something easy, it can still do a job. The honest downside, and why it's number 7, is that espresso precision and repeatability are not its superpower. The features that make it convenient, big hopper, cup selector, timed shutoff, don't necessarily translate to tighter espresso control the way stepless or micro-adjust systems do. It's a solid entry point, but if espresso is your main goal, you'll outgrow it quickly. 6. SHARDOR CG203S. The SHARDOR is immediately more espresso-focused in the user experience because it leans into modern conveniences, a display panel, adjustable time controls, and an anti-static-oriented workflow. On paper and in use, it feels like SHARDOR is trying to fix the mess and guessing game that frustrates people on cheaper grinders. Specs-wise, the manual lists it at 150 watt with a 9.7-ounce bean hopper capacity, and the grinder uses timed grinding via an LED panel where you can set seconds and start-stop. If you're used to eyeballing doses, timed grinding can be a big step up in repeatability. Set 12 seconds for your basket, make a shot, adjust from there, and you're in a rhythm. It also calls out an important safety realism detail. Don't grind continuously for more than 3 minutes because the unit can overheat and show an error, and you're told to let it cool for about 10 minutes before restarting. That's not a deal breaker for home espresso. Most people grind far less than that, but it's a reminder that this is still a consumer machine with limits. In my experience, the biggest win here was cleanliness. Anti-static claims are common, but the listing language around reducing ground sticking and making the flow smoother matches what you want in a home kitchen. Less cling, less sweeping. For espresso, it can get you in the zone, especially if you're not swapping beans constantly and you just want a consistent morning routine. But here's the criticism, and why it's number 6. Timed grinding is only as accurate as the grind consistency and how predictable the flow of beans is. And with lighter roasts or finicky beans, I still found myself weighing doses to double check. Also, when you start pushing toward really fine espresso settings, a grinder's build and adjustment mechanism matter more, and this still feels like it's aiming for great for the price rather than endgame. 5. Aromaster 204 Coffee Grinder. The Aromaster steps into a more dialed Burr grinder feature set with 24 grind settings that cover espresso through French press, and it's positioned around consistent grinding with stainless steel conical burrs. In use, the big takeaway is that it tries to balance grind control with a workflow that's still simple enough for normal households. One thing I genuinely appreciated was the focus on slower burr grinding to preserve aroma, which is exactly what you want when you're chasing sweetness and clarity in espresso. And because espresso is sensitive to particle size distribution, the claim of consistent output and my experience of fewer random fast shots once dialed made it feel more espresso capable than the bottom two picks. Aromaster also builds in practical capacity and dose control. The product page notes it can grind about 0.1 to 3.9 ounces at a time, and you can adjust via a timer to match how much coffee you want. That makes it good for both single espresso dose mornings and I'm serving guests situations. Another underrated detail, they talk about anti-static improvements and even UV blocking tint on the container in some descriptions, which is the kind of small quality of life stuff that helps a grinder feel less messy and more intentional. Mess doesn't affect taste, but it affects whether you enjoy the routine enough to keep making espresso consistently. If I nitpick, the limitation is the stepped nature. 24 settings is decent, but espresso sometimes wants micro adjustments that are between steps, especially when humidity changes or you switch beans. Still, at this point in the list, we're getting into grinders that can genuinely support a real espresso habit without constant frustration. Number 4. OXO Brew Conical Burr Coffee Grinder. The OXO Brew Conical Burr Grinder is a strong sweet spot option because it combines a proven feature set, stainless steel conical burrs, and a DC motor designed not to overheat beans, with a surprisingly thoughtful workflow. The first thing you notice is it feels designed for everyday use. Set it once, hit start, and it remembers your last setting. OXO gives you 15 main grind settings, plus additional micro settings, which is exactly what espresso people want to hear, because micro adjustments are where shot dialing lives. I found it easier to make small changes without overshooting, and that meant less wasted coffee during dial-in days. Capacity is also practical. The hopper holds up to 12 ounces, which is nice if you're brewing for a household, but the grinder still doesn't feel awkward for small daily use. There's also a trap door in the hopper so you can remove it without beans spilling everywhere, and that's one of those features you don't think about until you've made a mess once. For mess control, OXO specifically calls out a stainless steel static fighting container, and in my use that translated to fewer grounds clinging to the sides and less scatter when dumping into a portafilter. Again, not glamorous, but it matters if you're making espresso every day. The main reason this isn't higher is that it's still a broadly targeted home grinder, not a purpose-built espresso weapon. It can absolutely do espresso, and it can do it well for the price, but once you start caring about ultra-low retention, single dosing workflows, and commercial-level consistency, the top 3 start to separate. 3. Baratza Forte AP Coffee Grinder. The Baratza Forte AP is where the vibe changes. This is a compact, commercial-grade grinder built to handle all brew methods, and it's loaded with features that scream precision. The headline feature in day-to-day use is dosing by weight or time, with Baratza stating dose by weight accuracy to plus or minus 0.2 grams, huge for espresso repeatability. It uses 54mm ceramic flat burrs, and it's designed to grind fast enough for real workflow. Baratza notes about 2.0 per sec for espresso and 3.5 to 3.7 per sec for press pot. In practice, that speed plus accurate dosing makes it feel cafe efficient, even on a home counter. The interface is also very modern, a touchscreen with programmable dose presets and controls like tare, manual, start, stop. Once I set up a couple of presets, one for a standard double, one for a slightly larger basket, it became a push-button experience without losing precision. One feature I love for espresso people, Baratza notes you can convert a weight preset into a timed value that stays accurate within plus or minus 0.5 grams, which helps when you're dosing into a portafilter holder rather than the grounds bin. That's a clever way to keep workflow fast without making you give up consistency. The trade-off is that you're paying for capability you'll actually want to use. If you're the kind of person who just wants good enough espresso, this can feel like overkill, but if you care about repeatable dosing and fast dialing, it's an easy machine to respect. Number 2. TIMEMORE Sculptor 064S. The TIMEMORE is a modern all-rounder that feels like it was built specifically for enthusiasts who want espresso and filter from one compact, stylish machine. It uses 64mm stainless steel flat burrs and is described as capable of grinding fine for espresso while keeping consistency for coarser brews too. One of the standout usability features is variable RPM. Listings and specs commonly note an 800 to 1200 RPM range, which lets you tweak how the grinder behaves with different beans. In my experience, being able to adjust speed is not just a gimmick. You can use it to experiment with clarity versus body, and it can help when a particular bean is producing too many fines at one speed. The grinder is also genuinely manageable on a countertop. One retailer lists it around 9 pounds and gives compact dimensions, and it's rated at 150 watts on 120 volts. And I love this small detail for espresso workflow. A listed grounds catch capacity of 30 grams and a 57mm catch cup diameter that fits 58mm portafilters, meaning you can go cup to portafilter with less fuss. Adjustment is stepless, which for espresso is a huge win because you can move in tiny increments rather than jumping between clicks. That's the difference between almost perfect and sweet spot when you're chasing a 1 to 2 second change in shot time. Why isn't it number 1? Because the number 1 pick adds a level of control and integration that is frankly in a different league, especially if you value precise RPM profiling, app control, and a more professional ecosystem. One, Acaia Orbit grinder. The Acaia Orbit is the grinder I'd pick when espresso is the priority and you want obsessive control with real engineering behind it. It's built around a 200-watt brushless DC motor, 64mm flat burrs, and a 600 to 1500 adjustable RPM profile, so you can tune grind behavior with far more range than most home grinders. The adjustment system is also exactly what espresso nerds want, a stepless adjustment dial designed for precise control from espresso to filter. And Acaia's documentation gets specific about how fine that control is. Orbit's setting dial uses a 0.75mm thread pitch, giving smooth, continuous adjustment and enough room to fine-tune shots without feeling twitchy. Workflow is where it starts to feel premium in daily life. The Orbit includes features like an auto-reverse cleaning process and a knocker to help keep retention low for single dosing, which means when you change beans or settings, you're not fighting yesterday's grounds. That kind of retention control doesn't just keep things tidy, it keeps your next shot honest. Then there's the tech layer that actually matters, app connectivity and the ability to personalize behavior, including RPM profiling and manual RPM control. If you've ever wished you could make your grinder behave differently for light roasts versus dark roasts, or if you're chasing a very specific flavor style, that's where the Orbit can justify itself. And finally, the signature Acaia Flex, grind by weight integration with the lunar scale for exact dosing with automated start-stop behavior when paired in that ecosystem. When you combine precise stepless dialing, wide RPM control, retention-reducing features, and weight-based grinding, it's the closest thing here to turning espresso into a repeatable process instead of a daily guessing game. If you tell me your budget range and whether you're single dosing or keeping beans in a hopper, I'll recommend the best pick for your exact setup.